Imagine walking into a warehouse stacked wall to wall with dusty, decommissioned servers, machines that once powered massive companies, hosted websites, or crunched big data. Most people see them as outdated junk, destined for recycling. But what if instead of throwing them away, you could bring one back to life? What if that old server, built for reliability and raw power, could be reimagined as a high-performance gaming PC? That's the crazy idea I decided to try. In this video, I'll take hardware designed for enterprise workloads and see if it can dominate in gaming. Can an old rack mount server, after some tweaking and upgrading, really become a monster gaming machine? Well, that's exactly the experiment we're about to dive into. So let's find out if this unusual build is a hidden bargain or just an expensive mistake. But to quickly answer the big question, it's really not worth renting a whole server just to play games. Rentals can cost $5 to $300 a month, and in a few months that's already more than a decent PC. Plus the server stays in a data center, so I'd have to remote into it, making gameplay totally dependent on internet latency. Not ideal at all. That left me with two choices: give up or buy a server myself. And of course I went with the second option, scoring an old HP ProLiant ML110G7 for just $30, which is the machine we'll be testing today. Launched in 2011, the HP ProLiant ML110G7 was designed to meet the rising demand of small and medium businesses for a stable, dedicated server. At that time, many companies were still relying on office PCs as makeshift servers, while Intel had just introduced its Xeon Sandy Bridge lineup with better performance and energy efficiency. Priced around $700 to $900 USD, the ML110G7 offered a compact tower design, low noise for 24/7 operation, support for multiple drives, and remote management through ILO. It quickly became the gateway server for businesses taking their first step into dedicated infrastructure, ideal for file sharing, mail hosting, or small accounting software. And if we take a closer look at the components inside this server, the first thing worth mentioning is the CPU. The HP ProLiant ML110G7 often came with an Intel Xeon E31220 processor released in 2011 alongside Intel's Sandy Bridge architecture. This was the period when Intel started pushing the Xeon lineup into the small business segment, creating entry-level server CPUs, portable chips that still delivered rock-solid stability, and the ability to run continuously 24/7. When you put the Xeon E31220 in a gaming context, first thing to note is that it only has 4 cores and 4 threads, with no hyper-threading. In essence, it's basically a variant of Intel's Sandy Bridge Core i5 from 2011, but branded as a Xeon and given support for ECC memory to fit server environments, running at a base clock of 3.1 GHz and boosting up to 3.4 GHz. Its real-world gaming performance is almost identical to the Core E5-2400 or i5-2500 from the same generation. Sitting next to the Xeon CPU is 16 GB of ECC DDR3 memory running at 1600 MHz, arranged as 4 4GB sticks that fully populate the motherboard slots. When it comes to gaming or day-to-day tasks, ECC RAM doesn't deliver any noticeable speed boost compared to standard non-ECC modules. Its real advantage lies in reliability and stability, qualities that are essential in a server environment, but don't make much of a difference for casual gaming. Next up is the power supply, which in this case is a 350-watt unit. That's more than enough to handle a discrete GPU without an external power connector, as long as its power draw stays under 100 watts. Since there's no discrete GPU installed, we'll rely on the onboard graphics from the chipset for display output. So let's power it on and see if the system is still working properly. And of course, test what games it can actually run. It looks like the machine hasn't been tampered with too much because it boots up just fine. Inside the BIOS, we can clearly see the CPU is the Xeon E31220, and the full 16 GB of RAM is detected. Alright then, time to jump straight into the gaming tests. Running Fortnite on the lowest settings pushed the CPU to full 100% load at 3.39 MHz, with temps holding steady at 70 degrees Celsius and power draw around 38 to 40 watts. Even though this chip first came out back in 2011, it still held a steady 40 frames per second, occasionally spiking to 50. Drops were minor and only showed up during sudden action. Overall, it's playable for casual fun, but not the kind of performance you'd want for competitive gaming. In Valorant, at low settings, the CPU ran at 70 to 80% load. FPS reached around 70 during normal movement, but dropped to 40 to 50 in firefights, and even lower in close duels. While playable, these frame drops slow reaction time and make competitive play frustrating. Testing Minecraft without shaders pushed the aging CPU to its limits. Frame rates dropped into single digits with occasional freezes during world loading. Once partially stabilized, performance rose to 10 to 20 frames per second, but gameplay remained unresponsive. At 14 years old, this processor simply lacks the throughput needed for a smooth Minecraft experience, even at minimal settings. I think we've humiliated this poor CPU enough. It clearly needs a partner to help it game more smoothly. Luckily, I've got a GTX 1050 Ti 4GB on hand, and I'll be using it to test this setup. As you can see, the motherboard here comes with 4 PCIe slots, one X4, 2 X8, and a final X16. The tricky part is that the first 3 slots only deliver a maximum of 25 watts, while the GTX 1050 Ti needs around 75 watts to perform at its best. Thankfully, the bottom X16 slot can supply the full 75 watts. But here's the catch. The design is a bit limiting. If you don't have a low-profile GPU and only own a full-sized card, it simply won't fit properly. In my case, I had to use a PCIe riser cable to mount the 1050 Ti. Fortunately, once installed, the card powered up perfectly and displayed output with no issues at all. After installing the GTX 1050 Ti, graphics processing shifted from the integrated chipset to the dedicated GPU. As expected, average FPS improved to above 60. Unfortunately, the gaming experience did not. Severe stuttering and frequent frame drops occurred during both combat and normal movement. This issue is caused by a classic bottleneck. In Fortnite, the GPU was significantly stronger than the CPU, leading to mismatched performance and inconsistent frame delivery. As a result, GPU utilization fluctuated wildly, sometimes dropping below 10%, other times spiking to 90%. While raw FPS numbers looked better, the actual gameplay felt worse due to CPU limitations. Next up is Valorant at the lowest settings. Here the CPU clearly acts as the bottleneck, running close to full capacity while the GPU sits at only 20 to 25% usage. Even so, performance improved dramatically compared to before the upgrade. Average frame rates hovered around 140 FPS, dipping no lower than 100. Most importantly, there were no frame drops, making the gameplay experience smooth and comfortable. I could even play with a sniper confidently without stutter or lag. At this point, the biggest limitation isn't the hardware anymore, it's simply player skill. In Minecraft, the CPU initially struggled with world loading, limiting performance to 60 to 80 frames per second. Once stabilized, frame rates rose to around 120 frames per second. However, enabling shaders caused a steep drop to 30 to 40 FPS, highlighting severe bottlenecks. The system handles vanilla gameplay reasonably, but shader workloads clearly exceed the CPU's processing capacity. The final test was PUBG, and it proved too much for this setup. Even on the lowest settings, frame rates averaged only around 20 FPS. Movement felt sluggish, combat was nearly impossible, and frame drops happened constantly. Clearly, this system just can't handle PUBG. Unless you want to be an easy target, it's better to skip this game with this hardware. After running through all the tests, one thing becomes clear. Upgrading the graphics card alone isn't enough. Yes, the GTX 1550 Ti boosted frame rates compared to integrated graphics, but the CPU is still holding the system back. This bottleneck limits performance and prevents the GPU from showing its full potential. To get a truly balanced and enjoyable experience, the next step would be upgrading to a stronger processor that can keep up with the GPU. A faster CPU would not only eliminate stuttering and frame drops, but also unlock much more consistent performance across different games. So while this upgrade was a good start, it's only half the journey. What do you think would be the best CPU to pair with this setup? Drop your suggestions in the comments below so I and others can learn from your input. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.